everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. And for today's session, we're going to be taking up to the top of the hour, but I really would like to strive for it to be interactive. Please feel free to unmute yourself or to put anything within the chat that I may or may not be able to see. So if you want to interject or have any questions or comments or any kind of feedback at any time throughout the presentation, please just go ahead and unmute yourself and do so, or put something within the chat, and I'll be happy to address it. You don't have to wait to the end or anything like that. I want this to be as interactive and collaborative as possible. All right. So again, today's session, we're going to explore employment and incarceration and the American dream in Idaho. All right. Next slide. That's me. Oh, am I channeling nothing down? 1 second. Let's see if I can advance this. All right. So our agenda today is going to be fourfold. We're first going to explore what is the American dream. Okay. Next, we're going to look at how employment impacts access to the American dream. Third, we're going to look at how incarceration impacts access to the American dream. And fourth, and finally, we're going to answer or explore the question of what is the role of public health in ensuring access to the American dream. Okay. So again, we're going to start with our open collaborative part. What is the American dream? If you could please just take a chance to put your thoughts and ideas into the chat of when you think of the term American dream, what comes to mind? What does the American dream to you mean to you? What is the American dream? You can either unmute yourself and speak, or you can go ahead and put a few ideas into the chat. I see one thing that says better opportunities. Okay. All right. Upward mobility, home, family, job, enjoy safety. All right. Thank you very much, Joanna. Having a life where I feel financially secure and safe. Maria, thank you. All right. I see them flooded the chat now. Billy, okay. Isabel says, having the opportunity to live your best life, however you interpret that. I like that, living your best life. I like that one a lot. Ability to access resources that provide support to everyday life needs for everyone. Thank you. Sheila, being able to engage in our communities, to afford our lives and to feel safe. Heather, owning a home, independence and opportunities. Thank you all. I really appreciate this feedback on, what we, what this term means to us. What is the American dream? Really appreciate that. It helps to see some commonality across the themes here. Is one that we have the idea of owning a home, all right, and having a nice and comfortable place to live. When I put this presentation together, I had the same thoughts. I was like, what does the American dream mean to me? And actually, home came up here as well. I put a very, very nice home. This would be my dream home, right? When I went on the Zillow or Redfin, as you can see here, and I said, hey, what's my dream home? I looked at it here. Beautiful home right here, 6 bedroom, 8.5 bath. Too much cleaning, I say, Sheila, right? But it said you want a dream, right? Here's what we're dreaming about. I don't know if anyone here is on a meeting. Here's the address. This is 4162 West Quail Hill Court. If that's you're probably not within this. Definitely probably not on staff at our university. I don't know if our salaries are putting this big price tag of 3.59 million, right? But this is, dream home. I said, hey, this is it, but to dream big, this is what it means. Want to think, not set the bar too low. Want to dream big. This would be my dream house, right? Another thing, dream vehicle. When I was putting this together, it's like, what would be my dream vehicle? It would be this bad boy right here. All right, the Hennessy Goliath 6x6 Silverado. This is the 2019. I've been dreaming about this. What are we in 2025 here? Dreaming about this for almost 6 years. But just like with the home, comes with a hefty price tag, $375,000. This conversion is supercharged with 705 horsepower, so I feel that it's worth it. But this is my dream vehicle right here. This is my dream ride, the Hennessy Goliath. Other things when we think about dreams, we had individuals put within the chat home, car, or perhaps a dream vacation, right? Who wouldn't want a Disney cruise? All right. So you get the 12 nights in the Mediterranean with Greek Isles cruise, going from Rome to Barcelona here, but it's a price tag, right? Nearly $24,000. All right. My favorite part about this one, I was like, wow, for 24,000, and it's only a one-way cruise. Right. So how do I get home? Right. So hey, it costs. That was my dream cruise. Um, some people are into fashion or into shoes. I was never once, be really to be into that, but I try to be inclusive. Some people say, hey, I want to have these, dream shoes. These are Michael Jordan shoes. I think these are the first version of the Jordan shoes. These are called the Jordan 1s, the OGs. This came out in 1985. I've never been much of a sneakerhead or a collector myself, but there are people obviously who are interested in it because it's for this price tag, $43,000. 43 for a pair of shoes, and you can. But hurry, it's only one left. One left. You can place your bid here. It's StockX, and that this was all within the past week. I looked these things up, so people are somewhere into fashion. That would be their dream shoe. Um, we just had a Super Bowl, guys. We just had a Super Bowl. I don't know if we have any Chiefs fans or Eagles fans. You can put your gloating or your regret within the the chat here. But that's always been a kind of a dream to mine to go watch the Super Bowl. But this year I just sat back on the couch and watched it at home, partly because of the ticket price, right? And this was, I guess, get those. I think it's box office seats, 2 tickets total, 152,000. And this is what Ticketmaster. So these were actual, I guess someone paid it, uh, for your dream, kind of event. Some people's dream to go to the Super Bowl. It's going to cost you. In this case, upwards of over $150,000. Um, but lucky for me, I did land my dream woman. I landed my dream wife. This is my wife here, Christina. This is us a few weeks ago. On the few occasions that we go out, she complains that I'm a homebody. Well, she doesn't complain. She accepts the fact that I'm a homebody. But I did land my dream woman. Very, very thankful to my beautiful wife, Christina. So I did land that. However, listen, that's also expensive as well. We have Valentine's Day come up, right? You got your partners, you got to get the Valentine's Day gift, right? This one here, this diamond, you said ordered by 210 for delivering Valentine's Day. I did not get this, right? I think that this may have been one of her dream gifts, but for the price tag of $97,000 for this diamond, that was just slightly out of the budget for a clinical assistant professor. But hey, if we're thinking dream, I would love, I'm sure she would love that 5.0 carat diamond here for dreaming about things that we could have. Um, in the interest of that, Valentine's Day, this is what I would want. I wanted that fancy Rolex. So she didn't get the diamond, I didn't get the Rolex, the fully iced out men's diamond watch Rolex. Probably because she could. I say, babe, it's the most popular Valentine's Day treats. I want this for Valentine's Day, so I put the price tag of $24,000. That was just outside of the budget. So, what is the American dream? And you saw just here some of the things that we've reviewed and some of the things that we put in the chat. Every person kind of has slightly different visions of what that dream is, right? Of what they are, but we can all pretty much agree that it's going to cost, right? Whatever and however you think that American dream is, it's gonna cost. And I give 10 bonus points if anyone can figure out who this guy is. Right? Feel free to unmute yourselves or put it within the chat. All right. Scrooge McDuck. There we go. Now I've got you guys engaged. Yeah, so it's almost, hope you don't have to be quite Scrooge McDuck to the Scrooge McDuck favorite show DuckTales of mine growing up to live the American dream, but it seems like with the cost of things, you got to be pretty close. All right. So why are we talking about this? How does employment impact access to the American dream? All right. How does employment impact access to the American dream? So um, there's a federal organization, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they provide visualizations, or they're kind of the enforcement of fair employment policies within the United States amongst a number of the things that they do. Here's a fairly recent report. in September 29th of 2022, fairly recently, they released data that expands on employment within the United States. All right, this is a new data, dashboard. I'll put the link to it, share the link after this presentation. Excuse me. This is fairly novel release of data. ELC releases new data and expands visualizations so that you can see where how much money you need to buy a $25,000 Rolex. But the great thing about this is a great data set. This is public available data. All right. So anyone of you who've been in my classes or familiar with my work, I'm a big fan of using publicly available data because you can students can look at it, or just researchers in real time. You can go to it. You don't need any kind of proprietary license to view it. You don't need to have any sophisticated training in Stata, SAS, or any kind of data analysis software, but it's publicly available. And you can look at it and you can say, hey, it's Dr. Banks. Is he telling the truth here? Is he, fudging these results? No, it's publicly available to you. So here's the URL. I'll share it with it after the presentation. But the great thing about this data here is called EEOC Explorer. It lets you drill down by a number of different categories, right? You see year, geography, by race, ethnicity, by sex, job category. So we're going to do some just drill down. Again, these are screenshots. Feel free to follow live on the website if you'd like to, but just looking at what does employment look like here in Idaho, okay? And in addition to, figuring out each state, you can do national review, but you can also do state view. So in addition to that, you can also drill down by job category, all right? Which is important. How many of you guys remember hearing a president or an elected official give a statement, say, hey, we've added 400,000 jobs during this quarter, or 20,000 jobs, and every time I hear that, I would say, that's great, but who, where, how, what type of job, right? I mean, these jobs are not always the same. I would just say, what kind of, having a job at Little Caesars, no offense to anyone at Little Caesars, that's my first job, is very, very different, pays very, very different from my job as a clinical assistant professor, right? And you tell me we added, 2 jobs. It's like, well, what type of job? It comes with various different types of freedoms. I had to hit a punch clock when I was, working at that job, and here they just, Dean Man just kind of trusts my work that I'm, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But this data set allows you to do that. It allows you see all of these different types of job positions here, right? And so what we're going to look at, we're going to do some comparisons. We're going to look at administrative support workers, administrative assistants, and looking here within the state of Idaho. And we can look down here, we see this is great data, is interactive. It'll just, shoot out the numbers for you. We'll look at within the state. All right, so what we see here within the state among administrative assistants, that we have about 8,600 men and about 2,800 women. All right, so roughly threefold. There's 3 times as many women in administrative support positions compared to men. All right, and we can also look here. You see this other category here, executive or senior level officials, right? Senior level officials, those are your policy directors, individuals, CEOs, CFOs, those are individuals who are running organizations. And when we look down here at this data, at least in Idaho, whereas we had nearly 3 times as many women in this position of administrative support staff, we have the opposite. We see that opposite phenomenon. We see 3 times as many men in positions compared to women. 3 times as many men compared to women. So we're just, looking at data here, looking at differences. So what does this all mean? Well, so women are 3 times as likely within a state to have administrative support, and men are 3 times as more likely to have these executive, positions, which are higher paying jobs. And so one could say, hey, do we have differences here? Or men more likely to have higher paying jobs? Well, you can't just say that just off the, one can make assumptions that, hey, these types of positions pay more than that. But, those are just, presumptions, perhaps, educated presumptions. But the great thing about EEOC is that they actually release pay data, right? And this is very, very recent. This is just within March of last year. The Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission releases a data dashboard for just the years 2017 and 2018 pay data, all right? And why this is important, well, just have it highlighted here, all right? 1966, nearly 50 years ago, The EEOC has collected workforce demographic information from private employers and certain federal contractors through the EEO-1, formerly known as Component 1 of the EEO-1, this reporting that employers are required to complete. But in 2016, all right, 50 years later, the EEOC added a pay data collection to the form known as Component 2. So 50 years later, after they collected demographic data, they added pay data into it. I want to just pause right there. All right, just thinking about what we saw within the differences between men and women just within the state of Idaho. Right, we see these differences in positions where women are 3 times more likely to be in administrative support systems, staff positions, where men are 3 times likely to be senior officials. Why it took our federal government 50 years, right, to release pay data. All right. And I'm sure as many of you follow the news, I would actually probably try to see if you can download as much of this data that's available, because I can't promise you that it'll be available next week. To be quite frank, I'm surprised that it was available now with seeing the data that has been swept from our public websites over the past several days. But while we have it, we're going to look at it, or at least some screenshots of it. Great thing about this data is that there's this comparison tool. All right. You can look, and what we're going to do, we're going to look at the 2018. This is the most current year of data available within the state of Idaho. All right. I know this is a little small, so I'm having a little highlight here. Year 2018 within the state of Idaho, and going to compare it within Idaho. All right. Same year. But we're going to look at income differences between men and women. Right. We saw differences to say, hey, men are 3 times more likely to have these policy positions or senior executives, and women are 3 times more likely to have administrative. So, but what does the number actually look at? We're also going to look across income categories, as they call it, between low income, middle income, and higher income. Okay. So it's the 2018 in the state of Idaho between men and women. All right. Across income categories. Going to zoom in a little bit. All right. Just zooming in at this lower income bracket. So what we see here, what I want you to focus attention to, is that a fairly high number of individuals are making less than $19,000 a year among both men and women. Its left column is men, right column is women, but we do see differences about whereas 24% of men makes less than 19,000, we have 37% of women. All right. And in just totaling up these low income categories, we can see that just doing the math, 24 and 6, 30 plus 7, 37, 48% of men in the state of Idaho within this low income category. Whereas looking at women, it's a higher percentage, 37, 10, 47, 59 plus 13, I believe 72, nearly 3/4, nearly 75% of women in Idaho within the lower income categories, whereas 40%, just over 40% for men. Let's go to this middle category, all right? What they call middle, between these 3 extremes. But we look at this high-ranking middle between 80,000 and 100,000 per year, right? We see 8% of men. 8% of the men within the state making between 80,000 and 100,000 a year, whereas 3% of women, right? Nearly 3 times as many men in those positions. Let's go to the high-income categories, right? Not a lot within each category, but if we total those who are making over $100,000 per year, among men, 5%, 3, that's 8, 10, 12, 12% of men compared to 4% of women. All right. So we see that threefold difference, 3 times as many men making over $100,000 per year compared to women. It's almost a 1-to-1, 3 times as many men who are in senior positions compared to women within the state. So it's not just by position, it's actually by income within the state. We see those differences in employment also exacerbating differences in income. Here, this next slide here within this in a database, I just did the math for us, right? 48% of men within the lower income category compared to 71% of women. Again, 40% within the middle income for men compared to 25% for women. And at those high income earners of over $100,000 per year, 12% compared to 4%. All right, so we see that those categories are different. So how does employment impact access to the American dream? And I know, well, based from data that we saw, is that men have it better, right? Implant, I mean, there it's easier. It's looks like men have about 3 times better chance of pursuing. One could infer from the data that we just looked at that men are about 3 times more likely to access the American dream compared to women here within the state. Okay. All right. Next question. How does incarceration, all right, impact access to the American dream? Incarceration. So recent data here was just revised a few months ago, of October of 2024, but this most recently available data from the United States Department of Justice, the Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Statistics. You'll notice with me as my, work, a lot of times I try to do screenshots, so it's not like Desmond's proprietary analysis. Like this is publicly available. You can go and find the same source. You can duplicate it. You can find the exact thing within your own computers. We're just going to look at some things right now. We're just going to look at the adult imprisonment rate, right? And that is here the number of prisoners sentenced to more than 1 year under state or federal jurisdiction per 100,000 U.S. residents of the United States, age 18 and older, right? Just looking at the adult imprisonment rate. And what we're going to see is first is we're going to look at the imprisonment rate among males, right? Looking at the state of Idaho and also surrounding states, right? Within the region, we've got Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Montana, and Wyoming, all right? And before we share the data, just want to think that like, okay, we're looking at the imprisonment rate in 2022 among males. And when we look at this, here are the rates here, and they're available, publicly available within this publication that you can, pull offline. You can see the same exact figures. Imprisonment rate for Idaho is the highest in the region. All neighboring states, nearly twice that, over twice that of Washington, higher than Montana, Wyoming, over twice as that of Utah, higher than Nevada, higher than Oregon. All right. And as you see, if you download that publication, it's 10th highest in the country, but definitely highest in the region among males. What does it look like among females? Imprisonment rate 2022 among females in Idaho. All right. These are numbers. If you pull down the publication, you'll see that I'm not misleading you. Imprisonment rate for women in the state of Idaho is over 6 times that of women in the state of Washington. Over 3 times that in the state of Oregon. These are neighboring states. All right. All right. How could this be? Right? Are women in Idaho just more dangerous or committing more crimes compared to these, or what? Just want you to think about. And it is the highest rate in the country. Idaho has the highest, in 2022, has the highest imprisonment rate among females in the entire country. All right. So what percent of those are for violent offenses? Again, you can pull this all down within the 2022 Bureau of Justice Statistics report. This is state. Nationwide, it's about 95% of individuals who are incarcerated are men. So these are primarily men. But as you can look here within our neighboring state, Idaho has the lowest person. So when you look at these, slides right here, one could infer like, oh, wow, they're just, we're just more crime here among women in Idaho, right? When you look at those violent offenses, the lowest number of proportion of individuals who are sentenced, Idaho has one of the lowest imprisonment rates for violent offenses in the region. And those who are familiar with any sort of justice data, when you look at those who are imprisoned for drug offenses, right, it's probably almost going to be the opposite of that, and it is. Idaho has by far the highest imprisonment rate for drug offenses within a region and even a country. 5 times that of Nevada, over 7 times that of Oregon. And those being public health people here, public health. And so you have a different, I won't say a different view, but it begs the question, are these individuals, the men and women within the state of Idaho, have a higher propensity to commit crimes, or are their behavioral health differences in policies within the state, which criminalize certain uh, behavioral health conditions compared to other states. But this is what it looks like here in the state of Idaho. Here's the situation. Okay, so we've looked at some data. We've looked at data on employment. We've looked at data on imprisonments. But what does it all mean? Right? Here's a metric that I developed several years ago during my time at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And trying to say, put this into context. I was, grew frustrated by the, figures such as we've added 20,000 jobs in this period, or certain population are hired to be imprisoned. I said, but we need to put these things together, right? We know, how does this look? All right. And again, in my focus on trying to keep things simple, I have a strong history and interest in current work and communicating with policymakers. And policymakers, despite my training in statistical significance and running logistic regressions, they're not a real big fan of p-values, right? Universities are, and peer review publications are, but policy people not so much. They don't want to hear about peer. They want to know, numbers, keeping it as simple as possible. So in that vein, I said, okay, how do I communicate the fact that there are differences in populations or geographies concerning those who have senior level employment, right? The American dream, or at least the job that you need to get the American dream, versus living the American nightmare, being locked up, right? How do you put that? And so I said, hey, just put it together, right? How many people are imprisoned or living the American nightmare over the American dream, right? What does that ratio look at when you're trying to communicate the impact of how does employment and incarceration, well, what does it mean to my community, my city, my region, my state? We just have the ratio, and I call it the RISE, RISE, the ratio of imprisonment to senior level employment, right? How many individuals who are more likely to live, how many individuals are living the American nightmare of imprisonment versus the American dream of having a good job? So simple formula, right? We're just gonna put the numerator over the denominator. How many people are in prison versus those who have senior level employment? And we're gonna do it for those same states. We're gonna do it for Idaho and those surrounding states within the region. All right. So, and we can have a one-to-one comparison. We could, the way that the data came out, we can look at those numbers, individuals who are in prison in 2022 versus those who had senior level employment in 2022, numerator over denominator, and you have your metric right here. Right. All right. So these are number in prison. Again, these aren't any kind of proprietary numbers I pulled out. You can find these exact numbers within publicly available online within the Bureau of Justice Systems report. And you can also find the number of senior level employees from the database that I showed you. It's all public available. And so when you can look, it's just doing simple math. When I'm communicating with policymakers, you don't have to do any fancy logistics regressions. They don't have the degrees nor the software many times to figure out how to do it, but they do know how to do, most of them know how to do basic math. I'm just kidding. They all know how to do basic math. And as you can see here, you get this metric that comes out, a rise. So what does this mean? And well, you can see this here, the number first in prison versus number in prison. In Idaho, residents of Idaho are over twice as likely to be locked up than to have a good job. That's what it looks like. That's what it means. In Montana, individuals are about 1.95 more times more likely to be locked up and have a good job. So with this ratio, 1-to-1 is equal. We see Oregon is about the same. You have a slightly half the chance of having a good job versus being locked up. And so I think this metric is important for the American dream because it shows having a fair chance at it, right? There's certain populations based upon where you live. Where here you see an indication of data indicate that, hey, that we want to live in a color-free society. We want to live in a society where every American has the chance to, if you lift up yourself up by your bootstraps, you can reach that American dream. But it looks like things are a little bit different for people in Washington, right? Because I'm about 5 times more likely to have a good job than I am to be locked up. And that has nothing to do with how proud I'm pulling on my bootstraps, my skin, my color, or anything like that. Just living in a different state. Where in the state of Idaho, I'm twice as likely to be locked up. All right. Now this is just state data. All right. I didn't break it down by race, ethnicity, or gender, or any sort of thing. This is just putting a numerator over denominator, just looking at the data, and I show that this is an important tool particularly within this time where there is, I say, ambiguity and reticence and downright, could be illegal, right? When you're talking about things such as differences between population, right? But particularly as it relates to, everything that's in the news or DEI or things like that. And I say, yes, I'm a big DEI. I'm big on D, data, on E, employment, and I, incarceration. Right? That's DEI. Give me data. It's not about beliefs or feelings or anything like that. And I've been that way my whole career. If you give me data on employment and incarceration, will you draw your own inferences? If I'm living in a certain state and there's residents within this state, why, or myself, my wife, my children, my family, my community, why are there 5 times as more individuals who are 5 times more likely to have a good job than to be locked up? Right. And neighboring states, unless you're going to argue, well, people across this, imaginary border, they're just more likely, they have a better drive or employment, they're just more likely to be criminals. No, it really calls for something different as far as policy and how we are treating individuals across this population. Okay. So what does it mean? I mean, I'm talking to a smart group of people. I don't have to spell out, how being 5 times more likely to, be locked up or twice as likely to be locked up than to have a good job, how that has on your health and well-being. This is data. And again, now this is not my data. This is data that's from the Prison Policy Initiative that you can pull from their websites. And they've done their analysis here. I cannot speak to the accuracy of the low. I can just speak that it's publicly available data, the best that I could find concerning how, being incarcerated impacts one's income. But so this is the distribution of annual incomes for incarcerated men prior to incarceration and non-incarcerated men. So just want you to look at these first columns here, that even before incarceration, we see differences in income, right? So a man, and this is just nationwide, men who are incarcerated at the time of their incarceration, over half are making less than $22,000 a year. Over half of men who are incarcerated at the time of they're already living in poverty, right? Compared to those who are not arrested, just 23%. So even at the time of arrest, these men are poor. We look at the same thing for women. It's even worse. All right. Distribution of annual incomes for incarcerated women prior to incarceration, according to the Prison Policy Initiative, nearly 3 out of 4 women are living in poverty at the time of arrest. Right? At the time that they're arrested. All right. And so that's something. So even after being arrested, again, the mean weekly earnings of those individuals who are formerly incarcerated, the year after being released, earn about half as much compared to individuals within the general population. The impacts of being arrested compared to those, and even 4 years, you see that there's a catch up, right? 4 years post release. So this first set of columns is the year after release, 4 years post release. Gap is closing, and again, this is data from Prison Policy that you're not differentiated by state or population or anything like that, but just overall seeing that at the time of arrest, individuals are much poorer, and even after being released, they have lower incomes. So, how does incarceration impact access to the American dream? For this one, it was a little hard for me to put into words, so I just came up with the photo here. I don't know if you guys, or at least an image. I don't know if how many of you have seen the show Love After Lockup. I see Sheila. It's recently it's been getting a lot of airplay in my household. It's like downright addictive. But what the most common theme is that you'll see, I highly encourage watching the show. You'll really see, sometimes it's hard to put into words, that quantitative data. But when I really look at this as a qualitative study of these individuals after they're arrested, how it affects their relationships, their employment, it's a big contention, as you can see within these couples here on the show, that, oh, wow, I have a criminal record now. It's hard for me to, one, get a job. The types of jobs that I'm getting, they're making a lot less. And this is causing a lot of stress on my relationships. It's harder for me to get a job, right? These are both men and women. They follow individuals who it's called Life After Lockup. There's a show called Love After Lockup, the same thing, that after being arrested, right, is, they already had another theme of the show, even before the arrest, these individuals, just like we saw the differences You can actually see it within their lives, those who much less hired to have much lower income at the time of rest, right? And they talk about their families. I was raised in this disadvantaged, population, or my mom was arrested and her mom was arrested, and start seeing these patterns that you can't put into a peer-reviewed publication, that when it just shows you just like, oh, wow. And then even after release, okay, I've paid my debt to society. Well, now I can't get a job, right? Or I can't get the kind of job that I want, and I want to, have a family, and I got to, take care of my wife and kids and all these things. It just really does a great job of showing qualitatively how incarceration impacts access to the American dream, as far as home, family, kids, relationships, all of that. Okay. So how do we fix this? Or should we fix this? Can we fix this? Should public health be in the business of assuring access to the American dream? Well, according to one of our guiding documents, some may say Healthy People 2030, they do have metrics on it, right? When we explore the question of what is the role of public health in assuring access to the American dream, within Healthy People 2030, right here, we do have metrics on economic stability. With the goal here is to help people earn steady income that will allow them to meet their health needs, right? It doesn't say, help people meet the American dream, but the goal here is to help people earn steady incomes that allow them to meet their health needs. And they list specific metrics under economic stability. We have reducing the proportion of people living in poverty. All right. Another metric, increasing employment in working age people. All right. You're going to increase the proportion of children living with at least one parent who works full time. Also, according to Healthy People 2030, reducing the proportion of adolescents and young adults who aren't in school or working. We have a few more metrics here. Housing and homes, reducing the proportion of families that spend more than 30% of income on housing, and reducing household food insecurity and hunger, and eliminating very low food security in children. All right. And so I'm right at my mark here. I'm out of slides and I'm almost out of breath. So that means that you guys, now it's time to speak up. What is the role of public health in assuring access to the American dream? Or simply, should we even be answering this question? What are your thoughts on what we've seen today, and how we move forward, or just employment, incarceration? Would love to hear your thoughts.
I can't speak for all of public health, but I know in my little neck of the woods with the Caregiver Alliance, we're thinking a lot about caregiving in general. And so we've been doing a project with IDOC. Well, we've been on a grant with Department of Health and Welfare and IDOC for the past several months through a kinship grant. And I'll send it out, but there's a pretty good report that just came out from the Idaho, want to make sure I have the Idaho Justice Project, and they talk about this particular issue around women's incarceration. Like 80% of those women who are incarcerated have children, and so they're all going somewhere. And 60% of those women were the primary caregiver, and so it's kind of been our question. It's like, where are these kids going exactly? So we think about that with kinship a lot. So I'll make sure to share that. But it's something I'm thinking about a lot right now. So thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you. I mean, and that's where you look at the generational impact, right? Of having we just looked at those impacts directly upon the individual, but across children, and
Yeah.
that's, yeah,
No,
eighty
yeah, I came
percent.
from foster care, and there's this really interesting thing that happens where like the timelines for a family to reunify and like prison timelines don't necessarily line up. So really good parents are just sitting there incarcerated but can't care for their child, and so they just lose access to a child forever. Sometimes it's not family to step in, and so there's some layers to it for sure. That generational trauma that's happening and what it looks like in practice.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you very much. I mean, we can't have enough intelligent and articulate minds looking at this. right? Because there's a tendency, particularly within public health, is that we'll look at, stimulus or impact and outcome on the individual, right? That's the way our data sets are set up. We look at something within, and say, well, how did incarceration, impact you? How did it impact your income or your health? And that's the way the data sets are set up. And so we do analysis based upon available data, right? But when you look at, things such as that show, or just speaking to individuals within your life who have that experience of being criminal justice involved, you understand that the individual who's being arrested is just one big part of it, right? Because when you look at individuals who've been arrested, um, there bond associates, there there's financial impairments associated with someone has to bill or bond you out, right? And then let me just stop here because I don't want to get under the just looking at individuals who arrested who should not have been, right? Arrested without conviction. And there's a great big data set under there. There, I highly suggest the Paper Prison Initiative, all right, which I didn't show any data here. I don't want to get, off topic, but it shows that there's wide variability across states of the individuals who are incarcerated and who are incarcerated for misdemeanors and incarcerated for felonies. Just like we believe or should have the belief that everyone has a fair and equal access to the American dream, we saw data within the presentation that's not may not be the case. That particularly within the state of Idaho, men may have a different chance of achieving that dream compared to women. And a similar thing we see with arrest data. There are some states that show that less than half of the individuals who are arrested or ever convicted. Sometimes it's less than 30%, which begs the question, well, if they're not convicted, why are they arrested? Right? So you're telling me less than 30% of the individuals that you arrest are convicted. Okay. So why are you arresting them? And they have somewhere it's high. So it's just those differences there. But I have a former student of mine, Chris Phillips. I don't think he was able to. Let's see, Chris. Chris, I am not gonna put you on the spot. But if you do, if you feel free to unmute within a chance, I don't want to steal your thunder here. But Chris is a student who's doing some great work on data analysis concerning just what I stated here. Individuals who are arrested without being convicted, and who, just the hard time that they have in even getting their records clean, getting their mugshots from being scrubbed, taken offline, right? When we live in a social media area that's like, okay, you were arrested, it's found out the case was thrown out, but then that mugshot is forever attached to your name. And just how do you, is there a p-value that will describe that? I mean, how that feeling of looking at, you can like, well, it's harder for me to get a job. I'm making less money. Yes, but the impact of every day of what it's like to look at yourself and visualize, seeing, not just among, yourself, your peers, your children, your employers, your former employers, like all of that. How do you wrap those experiences up? And for instance, if you're and many of those individuals, when they're arrested, they spend 3, 6, 9 months, up to a year in prison before their cases are even called, right? And then now when you're, released and you weren't charged, but still you've missed time, you've missed birthdays, you've missed holidays, you've missed Valentine's Day. Imagine that, right? Your spouse or loved one was arrested and they turned out, hey, well, you weren't convicted, but you still, lost that hot time. Joanna, I see a hand raised. I'm not on mute, Joanna. I'm just having a hard time hearing you. Maybe the headset's on
Can you
mute.
hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Just losing a day at a job could cost you that job. Like you don't come in that afternoon because you were pulled over and it took time to get that cleared up. You could not have a job to go back to. Something I put in the chat, and this would require a complete paradigm shift for America, is something that I found curious when I lived in Finland, is that arrest records were not public. Here, your criminal history, your arrest record, everything like that, it's like once that happens, you get shifted to another train track. It's like it's a black and white thing. There, somebody who wants who wants to inquire whether or not you have an arrest record has to prove that something in that record is pertinent to the reason they're inquiring. It's kind of like here with the credit score. There, your tax records are public record. But here, somebody has to ask you what's your income, prove your income, that sort of thing, because that's private information. It's a similar dynamic, but for your arrest record over there, you have to prove you need to know this information. Like you need to know somebody's financial information to rent them an apartment. But here, they have it's on the renter to prove. But here it's they can find your criminal history regardless. But there it's like, okay, why do you need to know this person's arrest record, criminal history, whatever?
Thank
And
you.
I think that removes a lot of social stigma. It removes a lot of you're just automatically blocked from so many things just as a matter of one little mistake sometime in your past. But like I said, that's a complete paradigm shift because here we're so used to it being public record.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for that international perspective. And it touches on something, touches on our values, right? Public record, it's, there for public. And, as a father, as a husband, as the individual who's responsible for protecting the health and well-being of my family, if there's something, if not to be trying, if a serial killer moves in next door or something, like something I feel like dangerous, that, I would like, to have that information, right? I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm not gonna move, or I just keep myself, on guard. But but no, those are important considerations. We've had individuals who've been victims of crimes, and those, I mean, everyone deserves to, protect themselves. But within the United States, there's evidence of, there's been a shift. There have been some states who've moved forward to pass legislations, just of what you stated, Joanna, like, hey, we're not going to make these arrest records, publicly available. Certain convictions, sex offenders and things such as that, those are, public available, but just other arrests or where the person wasn't convicted or they made a mistake 20 years ago, it's not, you can't pull those up. However, some of those same states will still allow the widespread use of what we call commercial sites or commercial mugshot sites, which not only they sophisticate in a way that they can actually get all of those daily arrests, all those daily mugshot photos, and whereas the state can't publish them, right? These commercial sites they can put them on their websites, and the more clicks, the more monetization. I'm not an expert on that, but the more clicks, the more money it generates for that. And they can also share it on Facebook when you shut down the site. And so it's really, yeah, even when the state has legislation, it's like, we're not going to publish this daily. Yeah, individuals making quite a bit of money living off of the worst days in a person's life. And to try to, assess the impact of one, trying to even gather that population is really, really hard to even gather that data, right? All those individuals, because of the human research protections that we have among incarcerated persons and just those same privacy rights. Like, how does this impact your life or your employability or your relationships by having, when someone Googles your name, now they see the worst day of your life, whether legitimate or not legitimate, and how does that impact you every single second of every single minute of every single hour of every single day for the rest of your life until you can, get that removed. So excellent considerations. Jezebel, I see your comment here within the chat. Crimes. I'm just gonna read it if it's okay. Feel free to unmute yourself to share. The consequences of crimes, regardless of incarceration, can have major compounding factors in a person's ability to live a stable life. Even a DUI creates barriers to impact securing a job, getting to work, taking kids to school, getting stable housing. Absolutely. Having a criminal history creates a lot of barriers that are difficult to overcome, and leads to people having to prove over and over that they are worthy of basic human rights like housing, stable income, and financial security. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And Chris, I saw you unmuted yourself earlier. Didn't want to put you on the spot, but anything from your research that thank you for being able to join us today that you would like to share or to add in.
Oh yeah, no problem. Hello. But kind of wanted to highlight too, like funding in general, especially.
Go ahead, introduce yourself, Chris. Introduce yourself for everyone who doesn't know.
Oh, hi. Well, yeah, my name's Chris Phillips. Dr. Banks was my professor at BSU a couple years ago. Took, I believe, 3 of his classes, but right now I'm over at OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University, wrapping up my master's of public health there. And fingers crossed, hopefully starting a PhD in health systems and policy there this fall. But yeah, we've been working together, analyzing those arrests without convictions and how that just impacts life, families, yeah, ability to live a stable, especially I say social and financial stability. I'd say that would be like my kind of definition for the American dream too. Um, but one thing I really wanted to highlight was the funding for prisons. Like it costs over 100 grand to lock someone up for 1 year. And meanwhile, that really impacts, I guess, the income, of course, once you're released from prison. Income is dropped quite a bit, but that 100 grand a year that somebody's locked up for could be used for much other things, addressing the social determinants of health, helping people access the employment, education, social stability that they need in order to live that healthy life and achieve optimal health. And then on top of that, like the private prisons, I believe, especially with the current political climate, GEO, like one of the largest private for-profit prisons, like told their shareholders that like the future has never been like brighter for them, essentially. That like the opportunities ahead are immense with the current political climate and funding and shareholders. So on top of like for the public health perspective, I feel like it's so important to, I guess, yeah, change the funding of prisons, the policing, transparent policing data, all of that, and shifting funds from incarceration to the social determinants.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very, very much.
In that climate as well, Chris, I'm glad you're saying that because in this climate as well, I was just at a meeting last week and apparently Geo and large contractors like them also hold the contracts for detention centers for any kind of immigration issue. And so they also hold those contracts. So it's another kind of piece of the puzzle on this privatization of, I don't even want to say incarceration with immigrants, but just kind of that detention facility kind of situation.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you. Um, Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you. Just any other thoughts before I bring us to a close here? Okay. All right. No problem, Jamie. Uh, we are getting at our closing time. Well, I just want to thank you all today. I'm going to give you a few minutes back into your day. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Please stay tuned for our next installment in our series. We'll be releasing that with you shortly. But feel free to email me. I'll make sure you all registered receive access to the email as far as the web links as well. And thank you again for your attention. And we look forward to seeing you next time. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.